Good afternoon and welcome to today's in-practice session, creating engaging videos on a budget. Very useful for these times. Before I hand over to Devon Turner, the Communications Manager for GEM, the Group for Education in Museums, I've just got a few housekeeping announcements to make. I'm Eleanor Mills from the Museums Association and I shall be facilitating today's session. Let me just double check I'm going to cover everything. So first of all, attendees, your cameras and microphones should be switched off automatically, but you can use the chat function in your menu bar. We've had some brilliant chats all the way through conference, so do introduce yourselves, talk to others, share links and experiences, and network away. You can also tweet using the hashtag Museums2020. There is live closed captioning available at the bottom of your screens. Just click closed caption and then show subtitles. And there is live audio description as well if you click the interpretation button and then switch to the French channel. If you have a question that you'd like the panel to address, please post in the Q&A. We will do our best to get through all of them, but if we don't, then please just email events@Museums Association and I'm sure we'll be able to share details and answer questions in the future. Devon will put selected questions to the panel after the video that we're going to share in a moment. You can leave and rejoin the webinar at any time, and we're recording the discussion today, and it will be available on the Museums Association website in due course. Finally, please bear with us if there are any technical hitches, and feel free to private message me if you're having any trouble. Right now, I'll hand over to Devon to get started. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We have a great session today, and I'm very pleased to introduce Emily Nelson of Leeds Discovery Centre, Leeds Museums and Galleries, Hannah Sweetapple of the Egypt Centre, Swansea University, and Kate Noble of the Fitzwilliam Museum, University of Cambridge Museums. We are very pleased to present this session in collaboration with Engage for the Museums Association Conference. And I should mention as well that the video that you're about to see will be live on the GEM YouTube at any moment, actually. So you can go on and view it there if you like and share it. Please do share it, tagging GEM, Engage, and Museums Association. So without further ado, I will share our video and we will get started. And again, if you have any questions, please do pop them in the Q&A and I'll pull ones out to ask our panelists.
Hi everyone. Thanks for coming along to our session about creating video content on a budget. My name is Emily Nelson and I'm the Learning and Access Officer for the Leeds Discovery Centre. We're one of the 9 Leeds Museums and Galleries sites, and we're actually the central storage site. We're a purpose-built facility that stores over 1 million objects from the Leeds collections that are not on display in our other museum and gallery sites. So in my day-to-day role as Learning and Access Officer, I'm responsible for formal and informal learning, and I also run our primary school membership scheme. And through that scheme, local primary schools are able to borrow boxes of accessioned real museum artefacts from the collections, which they can use to enhance their teaching in the classroom. Now, I'm here to talk about how to make video content with the most basic digital and video skills and equipment. And that's because over lockdown, I made over 77 museum from home videos. Each of those videos was between 2 minutes and 2 minutes 19 seconds long. That's because 2 minutes 19 seconds is the maximum you're allowed to make a video in order to upload it to Twitter. And our museum from home videos were shared on Facebook, on Twitter, and they were uploaded to our Leeds Museum's YouTube channel where you can still find them today. Now, each of those videos used an object from the collections, and I was incredibly lucky over lockdown to have access to objects from the collections, even though the museums were closed, in the form of our primary school membership loans boxes like this one. But despite having access to objects, I didn't have really any video editing skills, and I didn't have any proper equipment. So this was the first thing that I had to overcome. Now, there were discussions within my team around whether you're better filming on a phone or whether you're better filming on a computer or an iPad or something along those lines. I decided that I didn't want to film on a phone because I found it quite difficult to prop the phone up at exactly the right angle. But I think that if you have certain types of phone, it might make it easier when it comes to editing if you're going to need to do some editing. Now, I decided to use the webcam on my laptop. This seemed like the simplest solution. The webcam films in landscape, which is really important for Twitter and for Facebook. And so it's also a high definition webcam. The picture quality seems perfectly good, and I'm quite happy with the microphone on my laptop as well. And so I set up all of my filming in my museum from home studio, using just my laptop. So it was here in my museum from home studio that I made every single museum from home video. I had to think very carefully about where I wanted to film the videos because I wanted to find somewhere that was neutral. I needed a big expanse of blank space for my background, and I didn't want it to be clear whether I was filming in an office, in my home, or in the museum. And so all I've done to this point is literally opened the camera program on my laptop, which is propped up by a certain number of books to be at the right height. Now, the problem with recording on my laptop is that I have no editing software on it. Through the camera program, I'm able to trim videos, so I can cut bits off the beginning and I can cut bits off the end. But other than that, I have no software that will let me edit, cut, stick different bits of videos together, or add things like images in the background. And so what that means is that I have to record everything in one take. Now, that brings with it its own complexities, but having said that, the difficulty around recording things on one take is nothing to do with your digital ability. It's more to do with carefully planning what you want to say, knowing what you want to say in advance, writing it down, having notes to hand, and knowing how long you want to be speaking for and how long it will take to say the things that you've written. So all of those are the same sort of skills that we use day to day when we do talks that are timed, when we do tours that are timed. It's just bringing it into a different environment, I suppose. And it also means that you don't need to worry about doing any sort of editing. And to be honest, at this point, I've already done quite a lot of takes. And I probably will do more takes in the future, but I don't need to worry about having editing skills myself. So this is my museum from home studio. As you can see, I've got this big blank expanse of wall behind me. I know that finding somewhere like this to do your recordings can be quite difficult, but the reality is that I'm not in a big space. Here we are. I will show you the secrets of my museum from home studio. As you can see, it's not a big space. I'm sort of crammed in the corner of a bedroom, and there's a lamp here because lighting is really important. So in this room that I'm in at the moment, there is a big window over here, which is the main source of my light. But it does mean that the lighting is very dependent on the weather. So you have to take that into account when you set up to record your video. If it's a really bright day, I found that I was having to draw the curtains to a certain extent, come and check, go and move them around a bit more. Today it's a really grey day, so I've got an extra lamp here to help light my face up. And you might notice the light shifts a little bit because of the camera that I'm using. When you're in the museum, you will probably have access to things like photography lights. So you've got a lot more ability to control the lighting and make sure that it's not that influenced by the weather. So once you've thought about lighting, you've thought about your studio, you've planned everything you want to say, it really is a case of hitting record. And over the lockdown period, I got very good at speaking for almost 2 minutes 19 exactly, because every time I went over the limit, I would have to either start again or try and trim bits so that it sounded natural and it didn't cut me off in the middle of a word or in the middle of a sentence. So once you've recorded your video, there are some other things you need to think about. And the main consideration for us was subtitles. It was really important that these videos were subtitled for access. And so once I got a take that I was happy with, and that might have taken quite a few attempts, I needed to subtitle it. Now, as I've already said, I have no proper editing software, either on my laptop or on my phone. So we had to look at what was available online. And we ended up using a website called capwing.com. So this is free to access for short videos as long as you create a login. And if you don't create a login, you can still use it, but it will watermark your video once you've finished with it. And so once you've logged into capwing.com and uploaded your video, it has a subtitling tool that helps you to add your own subtitles. Now, either you can auto-generate subtitles, but I actually found that that was almost as time consuming as writing them yourself, because the auto generator often makes so many mistakes you spend ages editing them. So I tended to write my subtitles from scratch, but Capwing does have the ability to play the video, play a sentence, pause it, write that sentence down as a subtitle and timestamp it, and then move on to the next sentence. So you could go through it sentence by sentence, writing your subtitles. There are lots of other paid for services and programs and apps that you can use to add your subtitles. So it's about looking to see what's available, to see what your budget is and finding what works for you. But that was the most important thing for me. You can also use Capwing to do things like add pictures in the background, which is another reason why it's really good to have a big blank space behind you. But I was quite happy to add my subtitles, download my videos at the end of them, and then upload them to the various social media channels once they were done. So I hope that that's helpful. I hope that that gives you some thoughts about how you can go about making videos in the most basic way I can think possible.
My name is Hannah Sweetapple and I am the Learning and Engagement Officer at the Egypt Centre in Swansea University. The Egypt Centre has been open since 1998 and is Wales's only museum of Egyptian antiquities. We have a collection of around 6,000 objects. The Come and Creates were our first of our normal in-house provision to be moved online. Come and Create was our monthly family drop-in craft activity. We'd have a different craft activity every month. They would cost £1 just to cover the cost of materials. And they would be facilitated by one of the workshop staff or sometimes our young volunteers if they were on the weekends. Moving on them online, the part of the reason behind this was because we'd just been put into lockdown and a lot of families were looking for things to do, and we wanted to create something that they could just do at home. They didn't need any special equipment to do, and they just could spend, you know, half an hour or however long they wanted being crafty and just taking some time out from the day. They included a craft template which I'd made on Adobe InDesign, which had written instructions in both English and Welsh. Then they were paired with a video which I made in my flat, in my living room, just on my desk. The idea behind this was the videos would be short enough that they can go on social media. I didn't particularly want my face on the camera, so it was inspired really by cooking videos I had seen on social media, where you can just see a person's hands and the pot of food they're creating. And I also didn't want to say anything out loud, because once I did that, I would either have to have subtitles in English and Welsh or have to do 2 videos. And they did take time and they did take work, and it just didn't seem worth it to do that. So I think they were successful. They were included in a roundup by Kids in Museums of the best things to do in Wales over lockdown, which was a lovely surprise, because I was making them without any sort of professional training. They were all made on my laptop using iMovie, which is the software that just came for free on my laptop. We were also contacted by other museums wanting to share them on their page, which was really lovely to see other museum professionals noticing the work and also wanting to support us. We also had feedback from families who had enjoyed doing them. One thing I noticed was that we'd had a much more global audience than we would normally. I had a really lovely email from a teacher in California who had been using them with her class when they were told to shelter in place. She'd also done some of our other learning from home activities as well. So not having access to the museum and being in lockdown also gave me a chance as a museum professional to learn how to use different media within museum learning, like these videos. I didn't have access to a big craft cupboard of resources that I would in the museum, so I was really sad that everything that we had on the Come and Create had to be, found, really accessibly in home. So stuff like, paper, colouring pencils, sellotape. There wasn't going to be anything like get some clay or get your glue gun out. Not having access to the museum put me very much in the same position as a lot of families, because I was just using what I had in my flat, and I really didn't want to spend any money on it myself. And so it really, was a great leveler in that way. So after the success and the positive reception we had from these Come and Create videos, we then decided to incorporate these in our digital schools programme, which was brand new for September. And to be honest, before COVID, I wouldn't have said we had a digital learning programme in any way. I think looking back, I must have, I thought that you had to have like coding experience or something to do that effectively. But everything we have made is from our homes. We haven't had access to the museum. This is also very good for schools because it is just not a realistic expectation to expect a whole class to be able to sit in front of Zoom for a day, which is what they would spend in the museum. And this way teachers can break it up and they can use the resources we've created throughout their topic. One of these examples is our mummification video. So we have a very popular activity with schools where we have a big ragdoll mummy, which we would then mummify with the class. This was a really hands-on activity, which unfortunately we can't do at the moment because of COVID restrictions. So I filmed myself doing this in my living room. Because I just don't have the space or the capacity to be able to do this live on Zoom for each school. But this means that teachers can pause the videos halfway through and discuss points, and we do give like questions and talking points throughout the videos that they can discuss and activities that can lead on from them. We've had really good feedback from the schools as well. They especially like the mummification one, which wasn't a surprise because it was always our most popular activity within the museum. But this is a service that schools pay for, and so it is generating income for the museum as well. The mummification video was a bit of a step up from the Come and Creates because I had to be on camera, which is something I had really avoided throughout the whole of the lockdown right up until that point. And I was really surprised how when in front of a camera, doing an activity that I've done hundreds of times with school groups, how I froze and how different that was and what a completely different skill set that needed. The people who have made really great films to camera, I have so much admiration for them. So I think doing these two ways has shown me that there's no one way of doing things. There are always, if something doesn't go to plan, you can still sort of salvage it. I had a moment with one of the Come and Creates where the lighting looked bad, but I could still cut it in a way that wasn't as noticeable. So I found it quite a flexible medium to work with as well. If I was to give advice to people who want to try this out, I would say to keep it simple. Everything that I did was from my flat with, nothing special. It was just me filming myself doing a craft. And I think when you think of film, there is a tendency to want it to look like a Hollywood blockbuster, but it really doesn't have to be like that to be effective. And I think I was also quite impressed by the sort of longevity of the film. So for me, I have filmed that mummification and it's happened, but every week when we have schools logging onto our virtual classroom, it's like they're seeing it live. They're coming to it afresh every week, and that is something I don't think I can overstate.
Hi, my name's Kate Noble and I work on the Schools and Teachers programme at the Fitzwilliam Museum, and I'm going to share some of the work we did creating videos during lockdown as part of our Look, Think, Do project. So Look, Think, Do, just to give you a bit of context, is a project which we started when the museum closed in March 2020, where we were trying to think of ways in which we could continue to encourage schools and families to be inspired by our collections while the museum was closed. So we used a really, really simple format, which is very much based on the approach we take to teaching in the galleries, following Look, Think, Do. And we selected objects from our collection which we knew were particularly popular, but also felt it was an opportunity to profile works that weren't usually on display, or artists and objects from underrepresented groups. The template for Look, Think, Do we decided on quite quickly, and we're able to ask our colleagues in digital to provide this basic template, and then we use this basic template to upload all the content ourselves and to edit all the content ourselves, with support from colleagues in curatorial, but also within photography as well, and the image library. And these resources have proved extremely popular. Simple though they are, they've proved really, really popular, and we've had over 25,000 page views since March. I'm going to focus on the do aspect, which we often, not always, but often we created little practical videos to accompany the resources, showing different approaches to making creative projects at home. So this is the Look, Think, Do homepage, and you can see how you just a thumbnail view of all the different objects that we have explored through the resource. And I just wanted to give you a flavour of one of the resources, so you can get an idea of some of the way in which the resources are organised. So you've got a big image of the object, some questions which are designed to be read out loud by a parent or a teacher, some prompt questions to enable sort of deeper discussion, and then the do activity, and this is the creative activity I'm going to focus on. So this was one which we made on how to make a shadow lamp or a mosque lamp. So I'll just give you a little preview of that now. So I thought it might be useful for me to just show you how I made those videos, because it's really, really simple and it looks really effective. We were really pleased with what we were able to do. So I used a program called iMovie, which is free, comes pre-installed on Mac computers, on iPhones and iPads. But this is what iMovie looks like when you get into it, and you can see these are all my projects on here that which we've been developing. So the first thing you need to do is to go and create your movie, which I'm going to do here, and choose some media. And you can see it's very easy to just drag and drop. So if I just drag and drop my images here, you can see I can get them into my iMovie account. So these are photographs. The photos that we used to make these films were just taken by members of the team on their iPhone, on their phones or on their cameras, just propped up on a pile of books or on a tripod. Some of us where it had some tripods at home that we could use. These are images which I took with my daughter, where I actually tried to combine it with one of her home learning activities. And they're just photographs which show the evolution of a creative project. And I try to always make sure that they're shot from the same angle, and that the composition of each shot is very similar as well. So you can just drag and drop all of these images now into the film like that. And you can see, I mean, it really does a lot of the work for you. It's very straightforward. If I go like that, I can make these a little bit bigger. But just by dragging and dropping those two simple activities, I can import the images. And I've already got the beginnings of my film. Very, very easy, very, very quick. And it sort of zooms in and out of the image. It's just a still image, but the way it zooms like that makes it feel quite animated. It gives it a bit of life, which is quite effective. You can actually play around with these effects once you get a bit more confident, but I won't go into that nowadays. Once you've got your images in place, you can add simple titles as well. We use the same titles and subtitles for everything. We felt it was really important to signpost what we were doing in each picture. So you can just add a very simple instruction here or subtitle. I'm going to say plan your story here as the first step. You don't necessarily need a text for every single piece that you have, but you can see it's quite easy and quick to do. You just type in what you want to say, what you want the text to say. It's almost, if you're used to teaching, you just think about what you'd say if you were teaching them to do this activity. So you can see I can keep doing like this. So then I've got my text on as well, my basic instructions. You can see it just overlays over the image. I could extend it if I wanted so that it goes over more than one image. And you can see very easy just to review it by clicking on this bar as well, which is quite handy. And then once you've got your text and your images sorted, iMovie comes with some preloaded jingles, some music. So you just need to make sure that the length of the music that you're choosing matches the length of your film. And then again, you can just drag and drop it like that. And then it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you obviously I'm going to do this very quickly, but then that just overlays the sound onto the film. And that's basically how we did it. So to conclude, I thought just to sort of give you some top tips of what we discovered and what we learned while we have been developing our skills, making these very easy films, is really just don't be afraid to just have a go. It's something I'd wanted to do for a really long time, but I felt quite intimidated by it and didn't think I'd be able to do it. But actually, once I started playing with it, I realised it was a lot more simple than I thought it was going to be. And it doesn't have to be terribly complicated. I think keeping your films simple and keeping them short is really helpful for you, but it's also exactly what our schools and teachers, what people are telling us they want with the films. They want them to be no more than 3 or 4 minutes long. 2 minutes is probably ideal. Most of our do films are 1 to 2 minutes long, so that they can be played and replayed as a way of helping to support somebody to make and do something. So just be really, again, part of being simple is just being really consistent and clear with the format that you're using. So use the same font and the same text, as if you were formatting a document, basically. Make use of subtitles. So this is really important for accessibility. But when you're doing that, obviously be really wary of having white text on a white background. You might need to play with the positions of the subtitles sometimes to make sure that you can see what you're doing. And check that the lighting, if you're doing so, like we had this one view and we used an A3 piece of paper of different colours as our backdrop. And we just kept that consistency, and that sort of orientation was important. Sometimes my team would send me photos and I'd have to flip them around so that they were from the the right view, like having the hands as if you were looking down your hands. And just really be creative and make use of what's already available and accessible. We were really lucky to be able to continue to work through lockdown. I've got a really amazing team of educators and artists, and Nathan and Holly and Rosanna and others as well, who were able to just have amazing ideas and make things based on objects they had at home. And that was really important, that these were things that families and children would have lying around at home and that were accessible and affordable. So yeah, just enjoy, have fun. It's a really great way of sharing your ideas and your collections, and good luck with your own filmmaking.
Okay, I think that concludes our video. I hope you've all enjoyed. And now we will jump right into the Q&A. Emily, Hannah, and Kate, if you'd like to turn your video back on and unmute yourselves, we will go ahead and start with a question that I'd all like you to sort of jump in and answer if you're able, which is, what have your primary challenges been in creating digital videos and resources?
I'll start then, since everyone's sat there being really quiet. I mean, I work for a local authority museum. I know that there's a bit of chat about that in the Q&A. So if you're sat there wondering why I didn't download some easy, free to use editing software, it's because you've got about 6 layers of IT bureaucracy to go through in order to get a very simple program onto your laptop. So that was a massive challenge for me, because I would have loved to be able to make videos that looked a bit shinier and were sort of cut really smoothly and had, images flashing up in the background. I had all these ideas to start with of how to make beautiful videos that were going to be really, exciting to look at. And I couldn't, because even if I had the digital skills, and even if I could have learnt those, but I couldn't get the software. But actually, I tell you, the thing that I really took away from this very early on when I was making those museum from home videos was, no one minds. It's not about that. And we all work in museums. We know that it's all about our objects, and it's all about us interpreting our objects. And the number of people that followed the content I was making, and I think it helps that I was making them every single day. I didn't have time to be doing loads of other faffing with videos because I was making so much content. But people, whether they were children, my videos being used by teachers, they're being used by, they're just being watched by the general population. But people just love the objects. And we know that because that's our whole job. We know that people are really excited to see what we've got in our collections. And I was just really lucky to have access to objects from the collections, even though I was, locked down at home. But yeah, definitely working for a local authority museum, you're quite limited in what you can access, I think.
Thank you very much, Emily. And Hannah, did you have anything to add to that? Any particular challenges?
I'd say for me personally, it was space. I live in a tiny 1-bedroom flat, top floor of a building in Cardiff. And so I had the camera sort of perched on the sofa. At one point I sort of tied a lamp so it was hanging down over me, because I had no other option really. I have a tiny quite rubbish IKEA desk, and it was, I think on a positive note, I got very good at working with what I had, and I can see all the other panelists nodding, and I think that has been a big lesson for me over lockdown, and this situation as a whole. Yeah.
Absolutely. We all just sort of had to make do with what we had. I've got a rubbish IKEA desk as well, so you're not alone in that. Kate, thank you very much. In your video, you shared your top tips, but would love to hear if you face any challenges as well.
I guess, to be honest, the biggest challenges were personal challenges, because I've got 3 children I was trying to home educate during lockdown as well. And actually, I don't have iMovie on my work computer, so I was borrowing my husband's computer, which he was using during the day. So to be honest, there are sort of logistical, practical things that we've all been facing in our different situations. I think that the sort of more relevant one is I was very jealous of Emily admitting she had her loans boxes when she was showing her video, because that's the thing that I found the most difficult through lockdown, was not being able to go into the museum to be teaching and thinking about things, and not having that connection with the collections. But I was very fortunate in that I have a fantastic team in the Image Library who were able to, and curators as well, who I was able to contact and have conversations with about individual objects. So if we had an idea for an entry, we were able to get really good advice and support from curators in the Image Library, which helped.
Excellent. And I love, Kate, how you said that you kind of wove in doing an activity with your daughter and filming, and you gotta make use of what you have, and that sounds terrific.
Yeah, we all have to be as creative as possible in this current situation, don't we?
Absolutely. So I see we've just had a question from Lisa for Emily, which I'll direct to you now. Did you consider your audience as part of the planning process when making your videos, or were the object stories exclusively the starting point?
Yeah, we definitely sat down with our kind of audience development team as well, and chatted through where we were going to aim the videos. I think that's really important. For me, so our school loans boxes are already topic themed on topics that schools teach, which was really useful, because as an educator, I wouldn't want to make anything that wasn't usable in schools, which also meant I had to really think about the wording and the language that I was using. But at the same time, I didn't want to make it too schools aimed. I was quite careful not to spend too much time going like, and this is, and what do you think? And all, those kind of things that you might do for smaller children, because I wanted them to be able to be used for parents who are homeschooling their children of all ages, and also just as a general interest thing, because I think, objects and stories and the things that children learn in school have an interest for everyone. So I did have to think about the way that, and the words I was using, and particularly when I was looking at topics that I know are Key Stage 1 topics. They were probably the hardest ones to try and find a level where, adults aren't going to feel like you're talking down to them, but also, 4 and 5-year-olds are going to be able to go like, oh, that's really exciting. But yeah, we definitely thought about where we wanted these films to sit, but also tried to make it so that they could sit across, whether you're a child, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, or whether you're just watching it because you're interested.
Thanks very much, Emily. I'd say all ages. I've watched them. They're delightful.
I think when you talk to adults as well, and you talk through some of the things that you teach, in our experiences, adults are like, oh, that's amazing. Oh, the Stone Age. That's really cool. If you talk about it in, you use a slightly different set of words, but just because it's on the primary curriculum doesn't mean that, it's not just a generally really fascinating thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in moving on to our next question, which is about finances, money talks, if you will. So I would love to again hear from all three of you. In talking about virtual sessions and whether you charged or not charged, what were the drivers behind that decision? And I'll start with Emily, if you wouldn't mind.
So we've recently launched a series of virtual workshops for schools, and they are all charged according to our normal workshop charging rate. We felt like that was really important, actually, because what we do is valuable. It's not just about income, and obviously as a local authority museum, we've got a massive council deficit that we need to be bringing in all the income we can, but it's not just about that. It's about understanding our own value as museums and as educators, and making sure that schools know that too. But we are also, I would say, quite lucky, because we have relatively low income targets as a service. We don't charge anything particularly big for school workshops. Our current charges are £50 for a 1-hour workshop, £72 for a 2-hour workshop. So, we are lucky to be able to say that's very affordable for schools compared to, places that aren't subsidised by the Arts Council and the local authority. But I think it's really important that we take a stand almost of, you know, everything is moving away from local authority funded or free to access. For schools are paying to access most of their services these days. And I think it's important that we recognise ourselves that we are worth them paying to access us too. But obviously it goes against your like instinct as an educator, because we'd all like to give everything to everyone for free. You know, in an ideal world, I wouldn't charge anyone for anything. But what we do is important. And I think schools recognise that. I don't think that they mind paying for sessions from professional museum staff, whether it's virtual or not.
Right. And Kate, then going over to you, from your perspective, the Look, Think, Do activities were free, but is there any aspect of programming at the Fitzwilliam that's had to come up against this charging versus not charging?
Not yet. I think this is something that was an ongoing conversation. Our on-site provision was free. We're an Arts Council funded organisation, and our on-site provision has always been free. We are currently developing a virtual schools platform with a teacher panel. I think there's some questions about working with teachers and consultation, which we could talk about as well. We haven't made a decision on charging yet, but these are certainly conversations which are ongoing, and I absolutely support everything that Emily has said about our responsibility really as a profession to acknowledge that our services are of value.
Absolutely. And Hannah, I know you've come up against this, if you wouldn't mind sharing a few of your thoughts and experiences.
So at the Egypt Centre, just to give you a bit of background, before March, schools were our biggest income source to the museum, then followed by the shop. And then March, this disappeared and it all dried up. So it was never really a question for me as like, will I charge, will I not? You know, of course I will, I have to. We don't charge as much for the virtual visits as we do the physical visits. And there are reasons behind this, because it just takes less staff time once it was made, because usually schools would take a whole day in the museum. They'd be split into groups, would have several members of staff, lots of volunteers, all hands-on, whereas now it's an hour session on Zoom with activities they do pre and post this session. That just takes an hour, 1 and 2 members of staff time tops, but we are bringing in our volunteers as well. So yeah, I haven't had any schools say like, I don't want to pay. You know, I think, as following on from what Emily said, schools do recognise our value. And I think that as museums, and maybe as museum educators, we shy away from assigning ourselves a value. We need to know that we are professionals and we are worth what we charge for. We're providing a professional service.
Absolutely. I think that's really important to know your worth. I think is one thing we can really take away from this session, and the massive amount of time that you've put into these sessions and resources, which is no small feat. So I'm just aware of the time, being that it's 12:57 at the moment, and that we will get cut off at 1 p.m. Just to reiterate, this video that was shown in the session is now available on the GEM YouTube channel, GEM_heritage, if you'd like to search for it there. I'm sure the link has already been put into the chat, but I'll just pass over to Eleanor from Museums Association to wrap up and give a massive, massive thank you to Emily, Hannah, and Kate for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Gemma, Emily, Hannah and Kate. This has just been such a brilliant session. I don't know about you, I think we've had lots of comments in the chat. It makes me want to make videos now. This is really exciting. Really useful, brilliant practical tips as well. And something that's just been coming up, if you want to copy and paste the chat, you can. You can just select all, copy paste into a Word document for your own use. We are also capturing it, and I think we should be able to share that. But we will also have a video of this session going up on the Museums Association website, hopefully next week. So that's all from us at the moment, I'm afraid. We just have a half an hour break for lunch next, and then we've got Nick Merriman from the Horniman, who's leading a session on museum responses to the climate emergency, which should be a really, really vital discussion. So thank you, everyone. Don't forget to drop into the MA Hub for a bit of networking and saying hi if you want to. That's open till 4 p.m. today. But otherwise, thank you very much and see you very soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.